So before we got on air, and I made sure to ask you this when we were on air, you said you were putting a costume on and going to a fair.
The Renaissance Festival. Yes, tomorrow.
Okay, so talk to me about that for a second.
About my costume or the Renaissance Festival?
I mean, a little of both.
Okay.
What are you, like, give me the deets here.
Okay, so I go with my, like, gaming group.
That was going to be one of my questions. Is this like a game thing?
Well, I mean, no, we're not, like, LARPing
at
the festival, but, like, the friends that I have that do role-playing games and the friends that I have that have costumes and go to the Renaissance Festival, like in a Venn diagram, it's
probably
a circle.
Some overlap there.
No, it's just a circle.
Sure.
Yeah. So my so my friends Trent and B are going in their Viking garb.
Perfect.
Yep. I had kind of like a sort of Viking-esque dress, but I actually lent it to another friend of mine. So
there is a whole like corner of your life that when you describe it, it is just completely like I can't even like picture it.
Yeah.
Like it's very difficult for me.
Well,
to even
it looks like I'm dressed up and at a Renaissance festival. That's what it looks like.
Sure. So what? Yeah. Tell me about the costume.
So my costume, it's a dress, and up until last week, and I haven't worn it since last year. I was 100% convinced that it was red, like that it had like a white like under thing, and then it was kind of like a red dress, and it had like lacing and kind of a corset thing at the top.
Yeah.
I was 100% convinced that it was like crimson. Turns out it's green.
What? We were doing a what color is the dress thing with your own dress?
Yes. Yes,
wow.
I was.
Wow.
It's very green. Like it is like Christmas green.
I'm not going to ask how that happened. That's like a whole other rabbit hole.
I don't know.
So you're wearing a green/red
right,
dress.
and then I'm borrowing some jewelry from my friends, and they are braiding my hair because I can't braid my hair. And I'm wearing a big leather belt and boots, and then I've got like, and specifically we had sort of the Ren Fest was floating, so it was either going to be last weekend or this weekend. And it ended up being this coming weekend because the weather is going to be very cool. And it's, like, fun to walk around in, like, your things when it's cool. Yeah. And I have this, like, faux fur, like, half cape thing that I'm also borrowing.
So all added up,
yeah.
What is the costume? Like, what are you going as?
Somebody actually, it's more medieval. So, like, the thing about the Ren Fest is, like, it's not actually about, like, the Renaissance era.
Right.
It's, like, vaguely medieval, and you walk around in these kind of permanent fairgrounds, and, like, there's, wood chips on the ground, and, you start drinking at 9:30 in the morning, and, you can get soup in a bread bowl and a big turkey leg, and you can watch people joust, and, like, buy a drinking horn.
Sounds great. Sounds great so far.
Yeah. So I like to keep my money in a leather pouch tied around my waist that I normally use for my dice. It's a fun day. You walk around. Yeah. When I was a kid at the Ren Fest, the people who worked there, like their big thing when you entered the gates is that they would like insult you. They would talk about what you're wearing, or they would talk, like how tall, what color your hair is, if you're tall, like blah, blah, blah. Right. And not like in a mean-spirited way, but in like this is like, this is funny.
Right.
And I don't think they're allowed to really do that anymore because now they're like, good morning, which is a little bit of a bummer.
Cancel culture strikes again, folks.
No, but it'll be quite fun. There's usually, some busty women walking around with snakes.
Gotta love that.
I get to pet some goats probably, which I really enjoy. Goats are my fave. I don't think you knew that about me.
I didn't. Every time we talk about something like this, a new detail emerges about you.
I'm a deep and endless ocean.
Yeah, clearly.
A deep and endless ocean. Yeah, so I'm gonna get like all I know about tomorrow is that I'll be drinking Beer. I always think I want to have mead, but it turns out I don't really like mead.
Yeah. Why not just go with what you know?
Yeah, and then I'll be eating some sort of soup in a bread bowl because it'll be like 60 degrees.
Yep, perfect.
And that's about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we should probably start this episode, huh? So let's just say welcome to this episode of Print Run. My name is Eric Hain. With me, as always, is what would your alter ego name be?
I don't have a Renfest alter ego.
You don't?
No.
God, I would. Anyway,
wait,
with me as always is
wait
Laura.
a minute.
Say hello, Laura.
Hello, Laura. Can we put a pause in that and talk about what your alter ego would be?
I don't know. I just feel like if I was putting on a costume,
I feel like you would lean more towards the jester sort of
what
thing.
No, I'm offended.
You've got very I don't know. I can picture you in tights and
wow,
pantaloons. You've got great stems. No.
Life.
You've got great stems.
I feel instead I would be, a really awesome looking warrior, but I guess that's, I guess it's, we all just sort of picture ourselves a certain way. Though this is one of those questions of if you were in whatever other alternate historical society, what would you be? And the answer is almost always guy dying in the gutter of diphtheria.
Yeah, my answer to that, always the questions of if you were, in medieval times, what would you die of? And it'd be what, or what would you be? And it'd be I'd be dead already.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in my 30s.
Yeah.
I'm a woman. I would be dead from childbirth already.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Anyway, do we have a rundown today? It's kind of an interesting, different episode.
Yeah, let's actually skip the rundown
Okay.
for a second and let me just kind of lead us
Please.
into
Please.
the situation. So, if you haven't been following Eric very closely
And why
on
would you?
Twitter, why would you?
Unfollow me today. There's no reason. There's nothing for you here.
You might not know that he is about to have his first child.
Yay.
So he's due in probably exactly a week, close to a week.
8 days. Yeah.
8 days.
Yeah.
We have a feeling it's going to happen any moment
It's
now.
imminent.
It's very imminent.
Yeah.
And so as we're kind of transitioning out of Bookbird Summer and into Eric going on
Into Hot Dad Autumn.
Hot Dad.
as I'm
Well, you've got new glasses and everything. It's very good. Eric has these new tortoiseshell glasses that bring out the red in his blonde hair, and it's very nice.
All the better to dress up like a jester or whatever.
It was a compliment about your legs.
Okay.
Just take the compliment.
I'll take it. Great. Continue.
So we're kind of, both of us are working to figure out what this means for our work and what it means for Eric specifically, because this is Headwater's first child. The dogs don't count. And so I wanted to, and you wanted, we collectively wanted to use this episode to talk about something that you and I have been kind of working through for several months now, but is now very at the forefront of our minds, which is that sense that your life and career are over.
It's done, folks. I'm wrapping it up. No. I mean, basically, we're sort of laughing because obviously my life and career are not over. In fact, in many ways, they are just beginning and becoming much more joyful, all the wonderful things that come with suddenly having a child, right? But, it is interesting how that, at various points over the last 9 months, that has sort of felt like the prevailing emotion that has needed engaging with, which is when you're in publishing, and this probably applies to any number of other fields too, but in our field, so everything is so intense and fast paced as you're kind of trying to find your way in publishing, right? There's not really set paths, and so you just sort of you start doing stuff, right? And you take, okay, this opportunity will get me this next thing and this and that, and book by book, and you're just you
got to kill to eat.
Right,
yeah.
You're just trying to fight and scrap and do all these things to get to wherever it is you want to go, and that can often involve It involves job changes. It involves role changes. It involves moving cities. I mean, even just like, I don't know, I have moved a bunch of times, or I guess twice now for, publishing. I moved to New York, worked there for a while. I've now moved here, from New York for publishing, like all these different things, like all of which is to say, you yourself are plenty to deal with in like figuring out how you exist in the book world, right? And we've talked plenty on this show about like how like, it's tough to even get the opportunity to do agenting work because it doesn't pay a super ton right away. Like you do have to kind of build up a list. You do have to do other work, and I've done that for years too. I mean, I've done a ton of freelance editing. I've done the 2 jobs thing, like so all of us have, like that's just how it goes. And so to look at all that and have gone through all of that, and then kind of be at a point where all of a sudden you're having a baby.
Yep. It's
like,
coming. You're going on leave.
That's
You have to relinquish all of your work. You have to take a break.
You're going to like send me into a panic attack on air. It feels, when you first start to conceptualize it, at least for me, and I'm always interested, like the other day I sort of put this question out there, like how others in the arts have dealt with it. I got some really cool answers, but like, it feels completely unworkable. You know what I mean? Like and I've always wanted, a child. Like this is something, we wanted and planned for, my wife and I, and all these sorts of things. But like, it's tough sometimes at first to understand how does this relate to a book career that has otherwise taken up all my time and has been difficult in all the ways that working in books is, all these sorts of things. And so, yes, the feeling is, well, I'm done. Like it's over. Like I'm not going to be able to, do all of the many extra things that you feel you sort of subsist on when you're working in this field. Like there's just not going to be enough hours in the day to do the job in the manner that I want to. And I think
it's even gotten to some point where there's been pushback, I guess, about the idea of going fully on leave.
Oh, yeah,
because if you go fully on leave,
yeah,
then you're gone, and when you come back, you have to start completely over again.
Which again is not like
it's not true.
Mostly what these 9 months have like consisted of in terms of thinking about my work is unpacking all of the things I believe that are simply not true, right? Like deconstructing various myths about work-life balance, about, parents, working, all these sorts of things. And it's, I don't know, it's been really eye-opening, and it's been really, difficult but energizing in its own way because obviously lots and lots and lots of people have really fantastic careers and this is not a new problem, right? Like I'm like, have you guys heard about this? Like having a child and trying to work? Has anyone ever tried that before? Like, of course, this is something that people have put decades and decades longer than that, into, thinking about, especially in publishing, right? Like but it's been interesting to try to start to engage with that stuff and realize that on the other end of this, like when I'm not dealing with a brand new newborn, right? Like someone, like a child who can, sleep through the night, or, when there's actually like hours in the day to do something other than, deal with a baby, like life is going to resume, and it's going to be different, but it's going to be like, I'm going to have these things still too. And this has been something I've thought a lot about too, in terms of my writing life as well, right? Like I feel like I spent a lot of this summer really terrified about, oh no, you haven't, published your great American novel by the time you were a dad. Like it's over for you, pal. And
let's pause for a minute on your writing, because I feel like, and I do want to talk about the day-to-day job stuff and the agent stuff and whatever. But I feel like the writing kind of cuts to the heart of these the insecurities in the 9 months. So just to do a quick recap. You finished your novel last year. Uh-huh. You sent it out to query because you can't represent your own novel because that would be terrible.
Right.
and you got some really good feedback, and then you undertook a very large revision.
I undertook a revision that at first didn't feel very large, but now
you're cutting out an entire POV point.
Right, but that didn't feel that didn't feel so. Not that we're going to talk about my book on this show, but yeah, no, it was a book with 3 POVs. I am removing one of them, and at first that felt very simple, right? Where it's like, okay, you just take some of it out, kind of smooth over the edges, and that is very much not what it is.
Turns out
it's much more difficult than that.
Local writer finds out that revising is actually more intense than they thought.
So, doing that work has taken more time than I thought, and it's been difficult. It's been really good. I think the book's getting better. All the things, right, that come with revising.
But the intention and the goal was that you would be done with your revisions by the time the baby came.
God, I love making plans like that, where it's like, I will simply finish this completely unwieldy creative project in the next 3 months, just in time I'll hit send and then take my, crying baby, and it'll all be perfect.
So let's interrogate, first of all, like that plan, right?
Right.
So the idea is that you would finish revising it, but then you would go on leave. So then nothing would happen with the book. Mm-hmm. And I remember several conversations that we've been having, which is, if I don't want to lose momentum on it. I don't want to take a break on it because then I'm losing time, and I've already been working on this book for several years.
Yeah.
So talk to me about like the unworking of the conceptions and like, I guess, the creative insecurities there that you've been working through.
Well, I think for me, it's been, and I think a lot of this maps onto agenting as well. Like, it's sort of parallel tracks because a lot of it is the same concerns and people and thinking and all that kind of stuff. But like, I've spent a long time working on this book, like anyone who's serious about writing a book does. And that has involved, there's opportunity costs to that, right? Like, when I am working away on this novel, it means I'm not trying to, at least for this is what it has meant for me. I understand others maybe do it differently, but like, it's meant not pitching a bunch of other short form work. It's meant not doing a bunch of short fiction in a way that I used to. It's this, when I sit down to write with the hours in the day or the time in the day that I have to do, this is what I've been working on, right? Like, this is where the progress has been made. And so to hit a point where like you sort of have this kind of scary moment where you're like, well, what do you have to show for it? And the answer is, the scary version, the version that isn't true, but the version you can start to kind of tell yourself is, well, you have nothing.
Because you haven't published any short fiction because you've been busy with this.
Not in many years I haven't, because I've been doing this, and like, it's, there was a while where I was writing, short stories and sending them out, and magazines were taking them and all this, and that was really fun in its own way. And I was like, all right, time to write the novel, right? Because I got, and then all of that like external feedback and like response went away because I like wasn't talking to anyone anymore, but I don't know. You sort of hit a point where it's like, oh, now this life is about to radically change, and all of these little goals you had thought you were, all these things you'd come to define yourself by, right? Like, because like, when you work on something for that long, you can sort of come to like see it as synonymous with like your own merit and who you are and all these sorts of things, right? Like, you can become really close to the work. I mean, any writer will tell you this. Like, and whether or not you think it's good or not often maps on to whether or not you think yourself is good or not, on a given day. And like, so to kind of hit that point where, okay, well, you're going to have to set basically everything down for the next few months to go all in on, raising a newborn.
So not only are you not going all in on a big creative project, but you're not doing anything creative.
Right. Like, and I do want to set, just for the record, like, as a backdrop here, I am thrilled about parenting. You know what I mean? Like, I cannot wait for this. I'm really excited. This is something I've always wanted, like, which is kind of be kind of a theme we get to in a minute. But like, it's, speaking specifically about these concerns, there's a lot of anxiety where it's like, man, this stuff is just going away. And I think where I've sort of gotten to is that anytime in publishing and writing or anything where you start to feel artificially rushed, something probably needs recalibrating, right? Because that's just not, I mean, obviously deadlines and stuff are good, but like if you're feeling like you're setting benchmarks for yourself that simply don't match to your life, like it doesn't mean that you are bad, it doesn't mean that you're like failing as a writer. It just means that your path is a little bit different, right? And I think maybe that's what it is like, the timeline, for writing, it's extended a little bit, and I think that's fine. Like, I mean, I even heard, like the other day I like put a question out on Twitter. I was like, those of you with fabulous writing careers or publishing careers, how do you and children, like how in the world do you do it? Like I would love some wisdom, please. And
yeah, so what did they say?
I mean, people had really good answers. I mean, mostly what they said is they got really good at suddenly they stopped wasting time, right? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, the kind of that old axiom, like, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, Like,
I've never heard that.
Yeah, because they're the people who actually will figure out how to get it done because they've got a bunch of other stuff they also have to do, And, like, that was really, things like that about, well, you have to be good at using the time you have, maybe working in smaller intervals is something that I also really specifically found useful because I'm someone who thinks, and this isn't true, but who, I can't write unless I've got, the free hour and a half or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, you have to kind of be able to do it in smaller chunks every now and then. You have to be able to get your brain into that space in and out faster. And it's like, that's the kind of thing I'm now thinking about, And I don't know, like one writer, novelist Aaron Sommers, who I respect and think is a great poster too, and all these things. But like, she replied and she said that she didn't even start her book until after she had a child. And she's like, successful and interesting and has a career that I really respect and all these things. And like, it was just like so comforting to like hear from these people. And like, I don't know, it was really good. Like, and I think that's where I'm trying to like get my head is like trying to get away from sort of this, so we, and I would be the first person to critique a certain facet of young people in publishing. People can feel a little strivey. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no,
I
don't.
Well, what I mean is that it's just there's a certain careerist streak in young people, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, but like everyone is like constantly making moves, trying to do the next thing, trying to climb this ever like narrowing ladder that exists in publishing, right? Like, and it can be all consuming. It can make you feel like cutthroat and ambitious. It can make you feel like, you're just like trying to do whatever. And I say all this because I have spent large portions of my career feeling that way, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, here's, checking the job listings, at various houses every single morning, seeing the opening come up and making sure you're the first app in so that you can, and send in the network, doing all of the shit, right? And trying to like, oh, there's a industry happy hour and I went to one the last 3 nights, but this one is going to have X person there. So I got to go, all that kind of bullshit, right?
Yeah, and it's underpinned by like quite a bit of ageism and that idea where you if you get back to the the livable wage thing, it's like you can only live off ramen before in your 20s, right? At some point your body starts falling apart.
And this feels like the moment where one, we're in different places in our career now, right? Like, you and I are, we're not the two most famous, literary agents in the whole world, but we are, we have our little setup, you know what I mean? We're established people, like we do the work we want to do, and
I want to talk about that for a second. So we're 2 years in, right, to us having
Headwater,
to Headwater having our own agency, and I would say we planned the agency before we launched it for well over a year.
Yeah.
Probably about a year and a half. We were actively working and planning on it.
Yeah.
And I think that striviness that you were talking about is something that you and I have had to confront often in the work that we're doing, especially in the last 9 months, because there's this, like, on one hand, we were like, we're going to start this boutique agency so we can kind of like redefine where our focus is as agents, and we can keep it on development and author development specifically.
Right.
And we can work on our own timelines. And so the intention was to divest ourselves a lot from that, like, kill to eat sort of like hustle sort of agent thing, because that's not the type of books that we necessarily want to work on.
Nor is it the type of, I think, looking forward from that point.
Right.
Even, like, it was not the kind of lives we wanted, you know? Yeah.
But at the same time, what happened when there was a baby on the horizon, it was, well, the agency's still in its infancy. We're still trying to work stuff out. If I leave now, then, you know, things will stop or slow down. And I feel like we're just getting started. Mm-hmm. And the thing that we've constantly been, like, reminding ourselves of, because I also had to go on an unexpected leave early this year for less fun reasons. But the thing that, like, I think you and I have both been struggling with is this is not, like, a medium to which we have to pour all of our, like, growth mindset and striviness and effort and all of that. Like, what we've done is we've created a space that we can grow into, that we can grow with.
Yes.
And so the thing I think that you and I have returned to, because we'll both have been on leave this year, is, like, this is not, like, this job, this business, etc. This is not something that our life gets in the way of. This is a part of our life.
Yeah. And that, I think that's really profound. And it's definitely how I've started to kind of think about in relation to, like, personal writing as well, too, because, you know, we had a conversation. You can go listen to it on Patreon right now with Zabe Eller. And, you know, he was talking about, you know, refilling the well, right? And it got me really thinking about, like, what do you do when, like, your creative juices are totally low? And the answer I've sort of come to is to just return to where things come from in the first place. Like, you can't, like, theoretically, at least for me, and I'm careful to speak only for myself because each writer has their own reasons for doing whatever it is they're doing. Like, but writing comes from life in some way, right? Like, you live, and that living instills some sort of feeling in you, or you know, or something occurs to you or whatever, and you go and you try to express that or work through it on the page in some way. And it's like, the point is that I think at some point, lots of these things, they sort of get flipped, right? Where it's like, in order to live, I have to do X, Y, and Z. Whereas instead, it's in order to write in the way that I want to, in a sustainable way for the rest of my life on a long timeline where I'm writing lots of books over decades, like, you have to first pay attention to where that stuff comes from, which is, like, setting yourself up in a life that is, that you're not, like, putting all this sort of weird artificial pressure on, you know, like, one that, at least, you know, that you can control. I mean, obviously life has millions and millions of pressures from various points that come from places you can't just turn off, you know, but, like, from yourself, right? You have to be willing to work with the grain and the current of your life in order to make these things work. And so, like, I like to think that through all this, thinking about it, and I'm sure even more so when the thing actually happens, like, I'm hoping that, like, patience and consistency, even when it's not the same amount of pure hours, is something that could really, you know, change who I am as both a writer, a worker, an agent, all these different things, right? Because, I don't know, I look at stuff right now, and I'm sure any, you know, especially people who don't have, like, children yet, or, you know, anyone kind of getting their start, like, you got all this time, right? And you go and it's like, okay, I'm going to spend 15 minutes looking at tweets, and then I'm going to, do this and that. And it's like, you have all this time, and even when you have it, you don't necessarily use it as well as you could. And I'm just thinking that, or I'm hopefully going to be very mindful about adding in this complexity and using it as a means of kind of filtering out the things that don't matter as much, as a way of like refocusing and perhaps even becoming more devoted to the things that do matter to me,
Yeah. I feel like we've been dancing around this like overall thesis, or kind of identifying the core of these insecurities that we're going through on kind of our like on-air therapy session. But I feel like it's important to have the conversation about all of this, because I feel like every single person in publishing or writer or creative in any way is feeling a version of this. And I think that we've had the privilege to be in a position where we have a deadline, like the baby is coming. And we have a platform to really analyze and talk about it. But I think all of this kind of comes down to this overarching cultural idea that art cannot or should not be just a part of a regular life. Like when you think about an artist, right? Like when you think about an artist, you think about the person who lives and breathes it. You think about the painter that lives in the loft and like only does art and artsy things. Or you think about the writer who's miserable and it all feeds into the art and they like kind of self-destruct. And there's this sense, I think, on some level that, first of all, like art doesn't necessarily fulfill you, but it takes away. Right?
Yeah, that's really good point.
That I think, and that's bullshit. First of all, like nobody would do art if it sucks. And so there's this idea, even in the way that we talk about the time you have to do the art, or like how you fit your art around your life, that automatically pulls it apart from all of the other elements. Mm-hmm. Like for you, like we work in the arts, right? So it's like, it's our job, but you're also a writer. And it's like, I think even in the way that we've talked about it, and like when we talk, in the morning, like what is on your plate for today? Like, what are we doing? Yep. It's, if I get my stuff done, I think I'll write for a few hours. Right. And it's like, we own our own goddamn business. like you can just plan into your week. I know. And it's not, and I think that's kind of a problem that a lot of people have. And I think it becomes, and not to say that like it's just a mind shift thing. It is also like a problem of resources and capitalism. Like if you have, a spouse and, it's one thing to like plan it into your day, but it's another to have like the people around you necessarily like understand it or respect it, because it also involves them sort of having to, confront their own ideologies about like how art should and can fit into somebody's life. Mm-hmm. There's this idea that after everybody goes to bed, you go to your computer and you type away, and that you wrote things in snatches and you just stole the time. Yeah. But like, what if you were just like, I'm going to write a book this year. And you're like, I am setting this thing, and it's not an extra thing, and it's not it's not superfluous. It's not going to be taking away from anything. It's just an activity. And I think on some level, I feel like people are really hungry for that mindset to shift, because if you look at like particularly in like with the pandemic, I am like, my targeted ads are all about like stress reducing artistic endeavors. It's like, do a paint by numbers, like do a cross stitch, do a puzzle, do like a coloring book. And I think we're also, I think that's a good first step, which is art can, step in and influence your mood and make you happy and can reduce stress. But then there's that idea, well, that's just like easy and simple and it's not serious.
Yeah.
And I think that when the transition is to serious art, like whatever that means for you, then I think we're still having to fight that like cultural and inner idea of how it works with your life.
So I love all of that. I think it's a really good distillation of so many things that not only I've been thinking about, but so many other people are thinking about right now. And it makes me think, I don't know if we've brought this up on this show before as like it's not like that weighty of a thing, so I don't know why we would have, but like I've sort of gotten into this like other art habit. I've started drawing.
You're drawing birds.
I'm drawing birds, which sounds as low stakes and superfluous as it is that way, and that's like the point. Like when I've like started doing this thing where like
I actually love it when you text me what bird you've drawn that day. Like it is one of my favorite things.
Well, it's been sort of a weird exercise because the first thing, like I wanted to do it because I needed any sort of basic creative outlet that I just didn't care about at all.
Low pressure.
That was the key. Like to bring nothing to it, to bring no expectation, no bit of self-image, no sense of stakes, none of that. Just set that aside and just let yourself for 1 hour feel like engaged and creative doing something that you don't really worry about its quality or because I'm not like an artist by any means. Like this is the first things I've ever drawn. Like I'm not good. But like the point is it's been like really weirdly illuminating.
Has it changed how you've been approaching your writing?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like because the mindset for like I'll find myself, drawing and like 45 minutes, an hour will go by and I'll sort of look up and realize, wow, I haven't had the urge to like check my phone or get up and go to the bathroom or, refill like because you can actually engage with it because it's not like this anxiety-inducing exercise like writing sometimes is, and like so I've been using it, I think, as a means of just trying to separate out some of those feelings from the act of working through, an artistic project.
So and I'm not in your head, but just I don't know if you guys knew that, but just from our conversations about like work and art, since you started drawing, you haven't talked about your book as something with a finite deadline in the same way. Like I feel like you've perhaps let that go. Like I have to be done with my revisions before the baby comes.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Is that because of the drawing?
I mean, that might be part of it. The other part of it is like at some point over the summer, it just occurred to me that this was not going to happen. Like by the time I wanted, like, and not because it wasn't going well. In fact, like at least for me, like so much writing just like begets more writing, and like I start, you pick at a thread in a book and like I think what I found, so this is basically we can have like a 2-minute craft discussion here, like in revising. So I'm cutting this POV, right? And in doing so, what I'm finding is that the actual center of gravity in the story is radically changing, right? Because it's no longer about like this character, right? Like she's not the character is a woman. Like she's not a load-bearing character anymore in the same way. And so like many of the book's central concerns, many of the book's like the key bits, it sort of shifts onto, into other spaces, into other parts of the story. And that basically means that like all of the existing chapters are also needing to be different, because
they need to shift their focus a little bit.
They need to do a little bit more, or they need to do something different, or certain things now need to be fleshed out because there's less. Like I love like, and I think I've tweeted this jokingly before, but if I could like put everything that happens in a book off the page, I would do it. Like I love when you can like reading when you can tell something's happening off screen and you're like, and that's how I like to write. And so when you shift perspectives there's less that you're away from, you know? And so lots of the little bits of implication and things, it's like, well, now actually you're staring that in the face, and it is going to have to be on the page, and you're going to have to figure out how to like depict this thing that was maybe feeling a little bit slippery and was better left implied, but now can't be. And I don't know. The point is that cutting the amount that I've cut is radically changing the physics of the book in a way that, to be clear, if I were like a sane person who was like, you know, had a healthy relationship to his work, I would find really fascinating and interesting. And
I would say you do find it that way. You also just are neurotic
and
about
I find
it.
it's a really cool like opportunity to like think about how stories are made, and like I love what like the revisions are going well. They're just going to take way longer, and I'm also like, you know, now working on this other thing. You know, I mean, you know how it goes. But like the point is, this was not the cut and dry 4-month task I thought it was. This is a bigger deal, and that's fine. But it does mean I've had to sort of revise my understanding of myself as this soon-to-be debut novelist, and more into, you know, just work, you know, just steady work, right? You know, still doing the thing, trying to get the thing done, all that. And I'm starting to come to peace with that, you know, a little bit more.
And I think part of all of that the baby has also made eminently clear is, I think both you and I, and probably every other agent or editor or publicist or anything, like there is this sense, you know, you get into this business because you love books. A lot of us are also writers. A lot of us have creative aspirations in a lot of ways that relate back to books that happen on a personal level rather than just a professional level. And like, I know for me and for you, kind of the underlying, I guess the underpinning of a lot of the frustration about the book and the revisions and kind of all of that other work is that there's this idea that your work shouldn't be like artistically rigorous because it's your job, and because your art is different than that. Like that's where your mind should go. But the thing is like, our job is artistically rigorous even if we're not writing the books. Right? Like we're thinking about story, we're coming up with, you know, plot hole, like solutions to plot holes. We're thinking about lines, and we're editing them, and we're doing a lot of writing on our own. Just for the job. And I think there's always this moment of reckoning and this moment of frustration where you get into this business because you want to work on books, and then it becomes time to do your own thing. And you're frustrated that that's not where all of your creative mind is going towards. Like I don't consider myself to be a writer. And I think right now in this moment, I can say that I don't want to be a writer. But there have been a lot of times in my life where that has been an aspiration of mine. And I very distinctly remember, I think it was 4 years ago, I was feeling very, like, I was having one of those, like, deeply creative moments where maybe, like, the work that I was doing as an agent wasn't, like, tapping the well or something, where I was like, I'm going to write a book. And I, like, thought about it, and I did character sketches, and I planned it, and I did all of this stuff. And then I sat down to write it, and then like something happened at work, and like a manuscript came in, or something happened or whatever. And the realization for me was that I want to spend my kind of artistic, you know, gallon jug or whatever on the work that I'm doing. And when push comes to shove, I'm going to drop the writing, because that's not something that is like number one on my list of things. Right. That's actually very lucky that like I can very clearly and easily make that distinction. A lot of people, that's not an easy question to answer.
Yeah.
Right? Like, like for you, I don't think it's ever going to be satisfactory or good to say, I'm going to set down my writing for a while.
Yeah. No, it's not. I mean, not in a open-ended sense like that. Like, I think one thing I am looking forward to is a few months where I feel less pressure to do it because something is going, like, and I'm sort of hoping that it's sort of in this one specific way. I mean, obviously the first few months of parenthood, I'm led to, I have no idea, I've never been a parent, but I'm led to believe they're very exhausting.
Yeah.
But in this specific creative way, I'm sort of hoping that sort of a recharge happens where it's like, okay, you're not beating yourself up every day to get, words or pages or, notes done.
Doing
Like,
it will feel like a privilege.
you can sort of readjust your relationship with it a little bit, all that kind of thing. And so I'm hopeful on that front. But like, no, I mean, it's sort of been a process to get to a place where, going on a few months of parental leave, and then beyond that, being a parent with demands each day, in relation to one's work, where that has come to feel very like hopeful and good in a way that I think might expand who I am as like an agent and a writer, as opposed to restrict it. But it's taken time to get to that headspace.
Well, it turns out that you still can be creative when you have more things on your plate.
Isn't that the thing, right? Like the other part of this, that, I feel like I've sort of wrestled with during this period is lots and lots and lots of people who are much more accomplished than me, much more talented than me, whatever. They do all of those things and do, parenthood and whatever their other obligations are. Like, this is not a unique like shackle I'm putting on my life.
Well,
like,
it turns out that art is not outside of your life,
exactly,
and
like,
it's not superfluous.
Right. And so like for these, that's sort of been the example I've been trying to follow is like, and this is what everyone was kind of saying to me the other day on the internet, which was, if this is important to you, and it is, you'll find a way, and I will find a way. And that will be a way that I feel like I'll even be more happy with than I am right now, because not only will I be writing, but I'll also, have a child, which is something I really want, and like, it's, I don't know. I think that I've sort of come to a piece. I mean, obviously now when I'm a week into this and I've got like 3 contract emails in my inbox, and, I'm trying to figure that out with you, and you're demanding that I stay away, and I'm like secretly doing things. And
No, you don't have to stay away until the baby comes. I'm just preparing you for the moment when I have to finish the contracts.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that. I mean, like, I was putting together my leave memo the other day, and was just like, every single, like, I was kind of going client by client, like, here's where things are at with this person. And each one, I was just like filled with this, like each working relationship you have is like a world unto itself, right? And it's like, it's hard to reduce that into, here's the thing to pay attention to, as opposed to, here's like every single client I wanted to like call you for like an hour about and be like, here's what we're doing, here's what we're thinking about, here's all the stuff that we've got going on, this might happen, but that's just not, I mean, it's difficult to set these things aside. It's for any job, but like especially one that you really do kind of care deeply and personally about. It can be tough to separate for a minute, but I do think that overall the exercise is going to be really helpful, apart from the reason it's happening in the first place being really like good and joyful. So
So let's first of all, I'll wish Eric a happy baby that sleeps through the night at 3 weeks, like I did.
Yes.
And so I want to transition this into kind of the announcements or the lay of the land.
Yep.
Print Run really only exists as a conversation between Eric and me based on, thoughts that we're having that come out of, the lives that we're living and the work that we're doing. Obviously, Eric will be on leave because of aforementioned child and lack of sleep, and a break. And so Even though we have unofficially taken breaks from Print Run before, I feel like it is a good time to announce kind of a season ending.
Yeah, just a few months.
Going on hiatus while Eric is on leave. There are a lot of things that we're planning on doing, or I should say I'm planning on doing to keep everything going, particularly in the Patreon space while Eric is gone. So while we might not have an episode like this until, 2022, I don't know, we'll see. We'll see how much we miss it, and how much we need to process things on air.
Yeah.
But what we are doing is we are transitioning out of the recorded Query Show and First Pages show, and we're going to be moving it to a Word document with track changes, which basically will give everybody the same thing, but will allow either, if it's needed, me to do it by myself, or for Eric to do it in his own time. So we will be posting those on Patreon. There's also a lot of room for me specifically to come in and answer questions and sort of focus on those writer things that don't require analysis and conversation
Totally.
between the two of us. So if you are a Patreon member, and you might know that during Bookbird Summer, I did a video about print options and taking you through books and whatnot. I can do more of those. If you have requests for me, we will be doing written stuff a little bit more. If we just want to use the rest of the year to be here's a hyper specific or incredibly general question about publishing. Laura, can you talk to me about etiquette for querying a revised book, or something like that? I'm happy to do either video or recording or writing. And so we want to keep the value add pretty high, but also account for Eric's tiny child. So if you have any suggestions, or you want to take advantage to this very brief format change, send us an email. We're at printrunpodcast@gmail.com. Don't worry, I am the tech admin for Print Run, so I will be getting all of these in real time. It won't be reliant on Eric being gone.
We're going to keep the value add on Patreon stuff for the next few months.
It'll just look a little bit different.
It's just going to look, exactly. But then, then we'll come back in, the new year, and I have a feeling that I'm going to feel really excited to...
Very antsy.
Get back in the recording seat and getting going on main episodes again.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere, you know what I mean? We're just, adjusting for a few months to account for life, which is, I feel like, a major theme of this show
kind
anyway.
Of the point.
So, yeah, exactly. So,
kind of the point. But if you do desperately want me to do a 15-minute breakdown of how RWA is exploding or something like that, there's room for that. I have the recording equipment.
Yes,
I'm in the basement. I can handle that. So again, we very much exist as a podcast, as a Patreon, as just an overall product, as people in this format to support you all and to give you all whatever it is that you need.
Yep.
And so if you need something, just let us know and we'll handle it.
Always. Always reach out.
It's very it'll be it'll just be a little bit different, but it'll be pretty simple for me to do if we need to do quick 10-minute guides or whatever. And so again, I'm going to leave a lot of that up to the listeners to kind of ask for what they need and what they want.
Yep.
But we'll figure it out, and I think I'm sort of envisioning also a series of novelty onesies of your baby being posted on Patreon.
Oh, there will be plenty of content.
There's a bunch of novelty onesies I wanted to get the child.
Yes.
But are only for like 3 to 6 months.
Yeah,
it's not
no.
like newborn.
Right.
So like
Totally.
the scale is going to be going quite up in
Yes.
terms of like cute Auntie Laura like clothing content. There's one.
Yeah.
There's one. Let me just give you a sense,
Yeah, please.
Eric, because I haven't told you this. There's one where you can get like it's a long sleeve onesie and those sleeves look like little like tattoo sleeves.
Oh yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
We'll love that.
There's also the
Perfect.
one that says I'm a little Swedish meatball.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah.
All good.
Although knowing
Yeah.
you, your baby's going to be super leggy and like really skinny, but
We'll see about all that.
I'm hoping he's going to be like a little football.
Yeah. Well, soon enough we will know.
Maybe even today. Probably
you never
not,
know. I
but
check my phone every 10 minutes. We'll see.
we'll see. Anyway, it's kind of a miracle that we were able to record this
Yes.
so close to the due date.
Yes.
But thank you all so much for your flexibility
Yes,
as
I
we
really
move into
appreciate it.
this.
I really appreciate it.
Please take this as permission to treat your art like a part of your life, not something that happens in spite of it.
Yes.
And I think that just because we have, a physical reminder of this now, this will be something that we're hopefully going to be coming back to quite a bit as this child, gets older and stuff. Because that's what they do.
Absolutely. They
All
sure
right.
do.
They just grow. That's what
Yes.
happens. Anyway, thank you all so much. We so appreciate your support. Let us know what you need. We're at printrunpodcast@gmail.com. And we will see you back here in the new year, or we'll
Yes.
see you over on Patreon, or if something deeply, deeply explodes, I might have to get on myself. I don't know. We're going to see you around.
We'll see
It's
you
going to be
around.
great.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.